Alright, before anyone pauses the video to type a comment, yes, the thumbnail is dramatic. That's on purpose. Not because the video is about the game dying tomorrow or the engine spontaneously combusting, but because sometimes the only way to get the loudest naysayers to listen is to bait them into clicking first. If that also means a few developers accidentally see while doom scrolling, that's a bonus, not a conspiracy, because there's actually a lot to talk about here. What you're about to hear isn't a rushed take pulled from the ether to fill 10 minutes. This comes from months of community polls, long-form discussions, and a frankly unreasonable amount of time spent playing Sea of Thieves. 8 years in-game, 8 years streaming it, and enough hours staring at the horizon to recognize islands by silhouette alone. When you've been part of the community this long, you start noticing patterns and pixels. So whether you're here because you watch my videos, you clicked out of curiosity, or you're here specifically to disagree with me, welcome. I appreciate all three. Grab yourself a drink, take a seat, maybe lower your blood pressure a little, and let's get started. Let me try to put this into perspective, especially for newer viewers who might be hearing some grumbling from longtime players and wondering why the veterans are clutching their tankards so tightly. This isn't about the good old days being flawless, because they weren't, but about understanding why the current update cadence feels lighter. Let's rewind to Season 6. That season also used a staggered release model, much like we have now. The difference is what actually arrived during those months. In the first month, we got sea fortresses, 6 new locations, each with its own commendations. Mechanically, yes, they were similar, copy-paste with a fresh coat of paint, but at least it was nice paint. More importantly, they were genuinely useful, especially as a reliable source of supplies, which most pirates appreciated more than they'd ever admit. Alongside the first month update, we also received an adventure. Back then, adventures were monthly or bi-monthly narrative drops outside of the seasonal roadmap, basically mini tall tales. This one tied directly into the fortresses, came with solid storytelling, a proper CGI trailer, and actual community engagement. Nothing revolutionary, but it felt intentional. Month 2 followed up with the Shrouded Deep adventure, which subjectively, but also kind of objectively, was one of the strongest adventures we ever had. It culminated in a large community event where players collectively summoned and defeated a large lie aboard Merrick's ship. And then, in month 3, we got the Legend of the Veil Pirate Legend quest, which is still widely regarded as one of the best voyages this game has ever seen. It is a narrative-driven, mechanically distinct, and ends with its own custom world event, something that still excites players to this day. So in a single season, we received 6 new fortifications with a unique visual identity, 2 narrative adventures, and 1 narrative pirate legend voyage with a bespoke world event. On top of all of that, we had regular monthly community events, nothing earth-shattering. Sure, go here, do this, earn a cosmetic, but they kept players engaged and logging in. At the same time, Rare introduced an entirely new mystery system, challenging players both in-game and outside of it to piece together clues tied to ongoing story arcs. If you stuck with it and solved the puzzle, you could earn in-game rewards, and in some cases even physical prizes. That kind of engagement mattered. So when you look at it as a whole, we were actually getting a steady stream of sustainable content from multiple directions. Not every season hit the highs of Season 6, and that's fine, but the overall volume and cadence of content remained fairly consistent all the way through to Season 9. And that's where things really started to shift, and not for the better. Now let's fast forward to Season 17 and Season 18. Here we're looking at 3 acts, one of which is always time limited, because nothing says relax and play at your own pace like a countdown timer, and a collection of lightly reskinned assets that don't offer much in depth. It's not that the content is bad, it just doesn't stick around long enough or go deep enough to feel comparable. To be fair, development constraints, engine limitations, and shifting priorities are all real things, and no one expects every season to be an absolute blockbuster. But when even Season 5, a season largely focused on quality of life improvements with no actual content, arguably delivered more meaningful change than what we're seeing now, it's understandable why players are raising eyebrows. So when the current model is presented as an improvement, that's where the disconnect lies. It's not that the game is doomed or that the developers don't care, it just feels like we're being asked to accept less while being told it's more. And pirates are many things, but subtle gaslighting has never been one of them. Now, to be clear, this isn't about the amount of content being added, the issue is what's actually being done with the content once it arrives. time and time again. Honestly, going all the way back to Season 10, the ideas themselves have been genuinely great. On paper, some of this stuff is fantastic. The problem has always been the execution. And this is where the long-running joke about the developers not playing their own game starts to feel a little less like a meme and a little more like observational comedy. Smuggler's runs are a perfect example. On paper, the concept sounds brilliant. A marked route across the map, valuable cargo on board, and the constant risk of interception by enemy players. Test that internally with a control group of people all playing as intended, and I can absolutely see everyone nodding and saying, yes, marvelous work, deploy it at once. And to be fair, it would work if that's how the game actually played out. In reality, there's almost no incentive to run Smuggler's runs at all. The mission arc itself is slow and uninteresting, and you can earn more gold by doing smuggler bottle voyages that completely bypass the whole follow this dangerous route idea in the first place. When safer, faster options pays better, it shouldn't be surprising that players choose it. Plus, you can do these better voyages in safer seas. So, case and point. The end result is predictable. Nobody cares, fewer people log in specifically for it, and trust erodes a little more each time. So when the developers say, we've got big things coming, players can't help but remember that Smuggler's runs were once marked as one of those big things. And well, we all saw how that went. And that's really the core problem. Not the lack of creativity, but a growing disconnect between great ideas and how they land once they hit the sea. Now, I don't pretend to know why this is happening, but something is clearly off, and it has been for a while. Whether it's budget constraints, internal miscommunication, publisher red tape, or simply an aging engine starting to struggle under its own weight. It's impossible to tell from the outside, and we'll likely never get a straight answer. What we can say is this: whatever the cause, the current situation isn't healthy. The signs are there, they've been there for some time, and pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. And it's not just the game itself. Publicity efforts haven't helped either. Campaigns like Twitch drops and other promotional events have felt oddly muted, generating far less excitement and engagement than they should. Communication around these events is often confusing, with incorrect times, wrong dates, or even the wrong rewards being advertised. Hardly ideal when you're trying to build hype. On top of that, in-game items purchasable with gold are at an all-time low, while premium currency items are being pushed harder than ever. And more often than not, these premium items are just reskins of older models, which only adds to the feeling that priorities are skewed. And let's not even begin to talk about the game's stability. We all know how bad it is at the moment. Taken all together, it's hard to dress it up as anything other than a bit of a mess. Not an unsalvageable one, but a mess nonetheless. Every time Sea of Thieves has a rough update cycle or a feature lands a little flat, the same conversation pops up again. The game needs a new engine. The engine is holding it back. Maybe we need Sea of Thieves 2. And honestly, I understand where that frustration comes from. When you love a game and you can clearly see what it could be, it's easy to blame the thing under the hood. But the truth is, that's not really the problem. Yes, a new engine would absolutely bring benefits: higher fidelity, better graphics, more breathing room for processor power, more memory for assets, smoother performance, allegedly. The whole checklist. Nobody is denying that. But an engine is just a tool, and a better tool doesn't automatically lead to better ideas. You can build the same shack with a golden-plated hammer, it just looks a bit more expensive while still being a shack. Sea of Thieves isn't struggling because the engine can't handle more, it's struggling because the content being delivered often doesn't push what's already there. The depth of voyages, the way the systems interact, how factions evolve over time, none of that is dictated by the engine. Those are design choices. The engine doesn't decide whether something is innovative or safe, it just does what's being told. And right now, it's being told to play things very politely. Now, about the spaghetti code. Yes, it exists. You can practically hear it slurping in the background sometimes, but spaghetti code doesn't mean the game is doomed. Every long-running live service ends up this way. It means things need cleaning up, refactoring, and care, but burning the whole ship down and starting over? No. The current engine is messy, but it's absolutely salvageable, and it's already proven it can support big, complex systems when those systems are actually attempted. A Sea of Thieves 2 or a full-engined rewrite wouldn't suddenly fix shallow mechanics or repetitive loops. If you rebuild the game from the ground up but keep delivering the same kinds of updates, you just end up with the same experience again. Only now the water reflections are nicer. Better waves don't make deeper gameplay, no matter how convincing they look. What Sea of Thieves really needs isn't earth-shattering technical upgrades, it needs more confident, more experimental, and more interconnected design. Systems that collide with each other, events that meaningfully change player behavior, progression that feels more than a sideways step with a new coat of paint. The foundation for all of that already exists. So no, the engine isn't what's holding Sea of Thieves back. And no, Sea of Thieves 2 isn't the magic fix people hope it is. The game doesn't need to be rebuilt, it needs to be pushed, because the difference between a good Sea of Thieves update and a great one has never been the technology. It's always been the ideas behind it. So that brings us to the big question. How do we actually fix Sea of Thieves? What needs to be done? And before anyone says it, no, this isn't a list of ideas I've dreamed up at 3 AM. This comes from years of community polls, questionnaires, feedback-focused streams, videos, and for better or worse, acting as a sort of unofficial spokesperson for the game across 8 years of development. Sea of Thieves content creators are basically Super Saiyan community managers, occasionally prone to bad takes. It happens. But this one comes from being deeply embedded in my own community and many others over the years of sailing these seas. None of these ideas exist in a vacuum, and they don't come solely from me. They're a collection of real feedback from real players, and some of it might not align perfectly with your personal views, and that's fine. But what you're about to hear is an honest snapshot of what a large part of the community actually wants. So, let's get into it. PvP in Sea of Thieves is not a side feature. It's not optional in the sense that it was tacked on later. PvP is a foundational pillar of the game, and it always has been. From day one, the entire sandbox has been designed around player interaction. Almost every PvE system in the game, with the exception of Tall Tales, exists to increase the likelihood that players will cross paths. When you put down a quest, the game doesn't just randomly scatter objectives across the map, it deliberately calculates routes that increase your chances you'll intersect with other crews. Voyagers pull ships towards shared points of interest, world events draw eyes from across the map, and loot exists primarily as a reason for someone else to care that you exist. The ship on the horizon isn't an accident, it's the game asking both of you to make a decision based on what you think the other is doing. That's Sea of Thieves at its core. But here's the important distinction that often gets lost. PvP in adventure mode is almost always optional. You don't have to fight. You can evade, you can hide, you can outsail, you can outthink, or you can simply decide that today is not the day. And that is completely valid. The game supports that choice. It always has. Where things start to fall apart is when updates force PvP onto players. When Rare adds content that removes the layer of choice, that's when a large portion of the player base quietly backs away, or maybe even skips an entire season, or just disengages altogether. And that isn't speculation, we've all seen it happen repeatedly. Let me give you the best possible example of PvP done right. Fort of the Damned. Fort of the Damned is widely regarded as one of the best updates Sea of Thieves has ever had, and that's not just my personal opinion. The proof is everywhere. Some of the most memorable moments in the game's history happened under that permanent green sky, usually accompanied by explosions, betrayal, and at least one crew saying, "Wait, they're alliance, aren't they?" And yet, Fort of the Damned was never marketed as a PvP event. It was marketed as a new thing to do, a ritual, a challenge, a high-risk, high-reward activity that naturally attracted attention. PvP wasn't forced, it was inevitable, but optional. Players chose to contest it because it was valuable, not because a giant arrow on the map told them they had to do it. Now compare that to quests and call-to-action updates like the new Reaper's quests, the Smuggler's Heist, the Skull of Siren Song, or even even the Burning Blade. These didn't fail just because the rewards weren't good enough, although that certainly didn't help. That was only the first layer of the onion. The real issue was these updates were framed as PvP first experiences. The moment you stamp PvP on something, you immediately lose a significant chunk of the player interest. Not because players hate PvP, but because forced PvP removes agency. It tells players when and how they're supposed to engage, and that runs directly against what adventure mode is supposed to be. We don't need giant glowy markers telling us exactly where ships are at all times. One of the best things about adventure mode is its uncertainty. Seeing a ship on the horizon through a spyglass, trying to work out what they're doing. Are they stacked with loot? Are they new? Are they dangerous? Can we sneak aboard? Should we avoid them? Or maybe should we team up? That is the adventure. Glowing items like Reaper's Chest work good because they're optional. They're an invitation, not a demand. You can go after them, ignore them, or just use them as bait. But when entire quest systems are built around massive flashy map markers and unavoidable beacons, adventure mode stops feeling like an emergent sandbox and starts feeling like a PvP minigame glued onto the open world. At that point, it's not adventure mode anymore. It's high-rule PvP with boats. Sea of Thieves doesn't need PvP to be removed, far from it. It needs PvP to be respected. Stop forcing it. Stop deciding when it happens for us. Give us engaging, meaningful events and let players choose how they interact with them. Because when PvP happens naturally in Sea of Thieves, it creates magic, and when it's forced, it creates avoidance. And the difference between those two things is everything. Season 11 introduced one of the most quietly impactful changes Sea of Thieves has seen in a very long time: the ability to dive directly to quests. On paper, it's a fantastic quality of life improvement. Less downtime, faster onboarding, easier session starts, and a much smoother experience for players who don't have hours to commit every time they log in. From a pure accessibility standpoint, diving is a win, but like most good ideas, it comes with a cost. Sea of Thieves has always lived and died by server longevity. The magic of adventure mode doesn't come from the quest itself, it comes from the people sharing the world with you while you're doing it. Crews stacking loot, rival emissaries circling, alliances forming and collapsing, grudges carrying over across hours. None of that happens when servers are treated like disposable matchmaking lobbies, and diving, unintentionally, encourages exactly that. When you can instantly jump servers to chase a specific objective, there's very little incentive to stay put. Finish a quest, dive again. See a ship you don't like the look of? Dive. Server feels a little quiet? Dive. The result is a world that constantly resets itself before any meaningful player stories can form. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying diving needs to be removed. It is genuinely useful. It respects players' time, makes shorter sessions viable, and lowers the friction of getting into action, and that's important. But what it does need is a trade-off. Right now, diving is almost entirely upside, and in Sea of Thieves, anything that removes risk without introducing consequences slowly drains the life out of the sandbox. A reasonable solution is to attach a meaningful cost to diving, something that makes you think twice, not something that makes you regret it. Losing 2 or 3 emissary levels when you dive is a strong but fair start. You're still free to do it, but you're choosing convenience over momentum. On top of that, trimming a portion of your supplies would reinforce the idea that you're abandoning a world, not teleporting with 0 consequences, like a particularly aggressive mermaid. But penalties alone aren't enough. You also need to reward the opposite behavior. If you stay on the same server, the game should acknowledge that. Quests could become more lucrative the longer you remain, emissary value could scale more effectively over time, and bonus rewards could kick in for crews that commit to a server instead of hopping between them, increase the likelihood of dynamic encounters, rival emissaries, or emergent events the longer a server persists. Give players a reason to want to stick around. Because Sea of Thieves is at its best when memorable moments build hype. When you recognize a ship from earlier, when that crew you avoided an hour ago suddenly reappears at a fort, when choices echo forward instead of being wiped clean by a dive animation. Diving should be a tool, not a reset button. Use it when you need it, but make staying put feel like the smarter long-term play. If Rare can strike the right balance, diving won't just improve session flow, it'll preserve the soul of adventure mode instead of quietly eroding it. You know, if you strip Sea of Thieves down to its bare bones, gold has never actually meant anything. Think about it. We play the game to earn gold, and what do we spend on it? Metaphorically, hats. Just hats. That's it. That's the whole progression loop. Sail the seas, fight skeletons, avoid getting sunk, sell your loot, and then buy a hat. Progression is what keeps players hooked in every game. Usually it's leveling up, unlocking abilities, collecting gear that makes you feel like a legend. In Sea of Thieves, sure, we have trading companies, reputations, fancy titles, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to buying a slightly shinier hat. That's it. The core driving force of the game is literally gold for hats. Poetic, isn't it? By design, Sea of Thieves is actually an extraction game without the lobby. You sail out, grab loot, and try to get it back to an outpost before someone else steals it. That is the gameplay loop. That's the core. But really, what's the point when your gold boils down to cosmetic trinkets? 8 years in, have things changed? Not really. We've added new ways to earn gold, new factions, new rewards, but it all circles back to the same thing: a new hat. And here's where the developers could actually get creative. Instead of sprinkling in another faction just to pad your gold income, imagine if gold actually mattered, like really mattered. As an example, picture this: your own pirate hideout. You can customize beds, furniture, decorations, but you can't just snap your fingers and buy it. You need schematics, which are expensive, and extra fancy versions, rewards from high-level world events. Then, once you've got your blueprint, you actually need the resources to build it. Resources you hunt down or find in crates or earn from quests. And the real genius: maintenance. Upkeep costs. Rent for your hideout, repairing your tools to build your hideout. Suddenly, gold isn't just hats anymore. Gold becomes a system that demands decisions, trade-offs, and strategy. Even someone with 20 billion gold can't just throw it around. They have to budget, plan, and prioritize. Now, let's talk about captaincy. Your hideout has a dock, and your dock isn't just decorative. It houses your captaincy and guild ships. Ignore the upkeep, and it deteriorates. Ships disappear. Suddenly, your crew is grounded, and you're a pirate in a hat, but without any boats. Docks can start small and cheap, holding 1 or 2 ships with minimal maintenance costs for newer players. But if you want to play big, buy a larger dock to house 10, 15, 20 ships, but miss a payment, and congratulations, you're no longer a captain, you're a landlubber with a very expensive hat. Instead, what we have now is gold for hats. Rinse and repeat. And don't get me wrong, hats are great. I love hats. But 8 years in, hats alone are a sad, unfulfilling carrot on a stick. Sea of Thieves deserves a system where gold has weight, where spending it tells a story, where being a captain actually matters. Right now, all we have is fashion advice. Let's talk about Sea of Thieves and its recent time-limited events and seasonal acts. On paper, time-limited events are great. They give players something to chase, shake up the gameplay loop, and create moments worth logging in for. But lately, it feels like seasons have started leaning more on FOMO than actual content. Seasons should be about content. New stories, new mechanics, new adventures. Not log in this week or you'll miss Fort Cloud number 12. That's not engagement, it's anxiety. Time-limited events are fantastic, but they should function like switches in the world. Think along the lines of mega stashes, or little toggles that change how the world behaves. Suddenly, the Legend of the Veil drops extended loot, or for a week, every shrine becomes a hotspot for gold. Phantom forts pop up in unexpected locations. That's the kind of thing that makes players adapt, explore, and interact with the world differently. Right now, we live in a world brimming with activities, yet nothing forces players to engage with it. There are forts, shrines, voyages, skeleton ships, but there's no reason to prioritize one over the other. Event switches could give the world focus. You don't need another Fort Cloud or a palette swap of a skeleton captain. You need context, incentives, a reason to care about the things already in the game. And if we're talking about time-limited switches, let's go one step further: an in-game calendar. Not just a vague "this month in Sea of Thieves" email, but something that tells players exactly when events will toggle on and off. That's how you take an already dynamic game world and make it feel alive. That's how you turn a seasonal act from login or panic into plan, prepare, and play differently this week. Right now, it feels like seasonal acts are a series of flashing neon signs saying, "Hurry up or you'll miss it." Event switches and a calendar would transform them into meaningful systems. Plus, it would reduce the workload for the developers. It's not about chasing artificial scarcity. It's about giving players the freedom to engage with the game world in new ways, while knowing exactly when these moments will appear. Time-limited events are powerful. As season acts, They're pathetic. Treat them like world switches, give players agency, and stop hiding behind FOMO. Then, and only then, we'll have seasons that feel like content, not just a ticking clock. Sea of Thieves is a game built on freedom, chaos, and the stories we make as players. Yet somewhere along the line, the way this game is being developed has started to feel measured, too reliant on data, too reliant on surveys and questionnaires. There's a wise saying: wise men speak because they have something to say, fools speak because they have to say something. Right now, the loudest voices in the Sea of Thieves community aren't necessarily the wisest. They're the newest, the most passionate, the ones desperate to be heard because they've just discovered the thrill of setting sail. And don't get me wrong, they have ideas, big ideas, exciting ideas. But if all you do is listen to those ideas, the result is a world 100 miles wide and 2 inches deep. And that is exactly where we are right now. It's not speculation to see it. Look at the cadence of updates today. Look at the way content is rolled out. Everything is designed to hook newer players, to make the first 3 weeks feel exciting, safe, and accessible. Every system simplified, every mechanic explained, every event turned into maximum short-term engagement. And the result? A game that feels to veterans like it's drifting, like the seas themselves are easier to navigate, but the adventures have been flattened. Player surveys show what's popular, what's clicked, what caused the highest engagement. But engagement is not depth. Engagement is clicks, not meaning. It's the noise of the many, not the important insight of the few. And if you build a world solely on data from those who've just stepped aboard with the loudest voices, you get a ship with no ballast. Beautiful on the surface, but easily tipped, shallow, and untested by real storms. What the developers need to do is focus on veterans, on players who've sailed these waters for hundreds, even thousands of hours, those who've mastered the maps, the mechanics, the lore, and the chaos of the open seas. And ask, how do you want this world to grow? What challenges excite you? What stories do you want to tell? Because right now, updates cater to little Timmy, who's played for 3 weeks and wants to understand the basics. And yes, accessibility is important, but when accessibility becomes the driving force for the entirety of the game, depth is sacrificed. Adventure is sacrificed. The kind of experiences that make Sea of Thieves legendary are sacrificed. Sea of Thieves is not just a game, it is a living, breathing legend, written by every player who dared to raise a sail and chase that horizon. Its story is not confined to menus or cutscenes, it lives in the storms we barely survived, in alliances that held when everything was at stake, in betrayals that still make us laugh years later. This world is vast, wild, and uncontainable, and no matter how long you've sailed these waters, you can feel it in your bones. If you were stepping into this world for the very first time today, it would leave you speechless. There's no other game like Sea of Thieves, because no other game lets you live your story, shape it, bleed into it in a way that feels yours and yours alone. It has created something rare, something fragile, something beautiful. Communities built not by algorithms or not by marketing, not by scripted path, but by chance encounters on the open sea. Strangers who became crewmates, rivals who became friends, stories that mattered because we mattered. Rare was never afraid to push the boundaries, to stand proud, to reflect the values that reach beyond the game itself, and in doing so, Sea of Thieves became more than entertainment. It became a place where people felt seen, felt welcome, felt like they belonged. There is a Sea of Thieves feeling that no other world can replicate. Freedom and chaos, joy and loss, laughter echoing through the dark, and the quiet moments of awe when the sea is still, the wind is in your sails, the horizon unbroken. And that magic was never designed. It was born from the players, from every decision, every risk, every story we dared to make ours. And yes, the seas feel heavier now. The game carries the weight of its own success, of years of expectations, of love that never left but sometimes feels unheard. The golden horizon seems distant, the storms feel longer, the quiet corners of the world whisper reminders of what could be, of what should be. But this is not the end of the voyage. Because all it takes is a spark, a single moment of boldness, of imagination, of daring to feel the wind fill your sails again. Not only for the new pirates who are yet to set foot on deck, but for those who have stayed when the winds died down. Those who pushed through the quiet seasons. Those who create, those who stream, those who tell stories not for fame, not for clout, but because we believe in this world. We want to see it shine as brightly as it once did, and brighter still. No adventure means anything if there is no one to share it with. And when the seas grow safe, when the stories shrink, when creativity is boxed in, the world feels emptier, not because the heart is gone, but because it's waiting to be reignited. Players need challenges, opportunities, reason to chart their own course. Legends need room to grow. Moments need to matter, and hearts need to remember why they fell in love with these waters in the first place. So, this isn't anger, this isn't blame, this is hope. Hope that the world we love can be richer, bolder, brighter. Hope that the stories we tell, the battles we fight, the treasures we find, the friendships we forge, can again matter in ways we've only glimpsed. Hope that we can look to the horizon, the wind fills our sails with possibility and not just nostalgia. Give us something to say. Give us a reason to remember. Give us a Sea of Thieves worthy of the stories we've already lived and the legends we've yet to write. Or you could just rely on data. Speaking of data, you could subscribe if you like. Bye.